Good morning, this is Dallas. For the people who are watching, this is a beginners to programming or intro to programming. We're going to cover two languages today, Python and C#. The reason for the two languages is there's a question that I'm pretty sure that not only I, but a lot of people get asked, like which language to learn, which language to learn, which language to learn. And I really want to show you it doesn't matter which language you learn because they're all at the end of the day sort of the same. The logic, the steps, the only thing that's really different is the syntax. You know, some use semicolons, some use colons, some use curly braces, and so we'll look at that, and we're going to look at C# where it's a strongly typed language, and Python not so much, but Python relies on indentation and stuff like that, so it's a good language to learn. C#, Java, or Python are good beginner languages. Python, I would say more so because it teaches you how to write clean code, because it does rely on indentation and spacing. We're going to go, now this is a very beginner's course or video here, so if you're an advanced programmer, you've been programming for some time, you might get really bored with this. This is for people who are just starting out, or maybe you're not familiar with the language, and so you're like, well, I'll take this. So I will go over the basics of the languages. It's going to be a little bit of a long video, so anyways, I have some assignments or questions that we'll go through with both languages. And all these questions I got from codingbat.com, so you can more than welcome follow along in CodingBat. And when I do the C#, you can also do the Java if you're going to go to the website and walk through the steps as well. So C# is almost identical to Java. There's really not a big difference other than the frameworks and a little, for instance, like console.writeLine is console.println, I think, in Java. So there's some minor differences, but for the most part, they're pretty much the same. Right, so I'm going to use something called Spider to write my Python code. And you see how I got it. Let's go ahead and delete that. I did a previous video, but something happened. I don't know. It didn't record correctly, so let's do a new file here. We'll save it on the desktop. Name it intro. Okay. All right. So I'm going to define a function. Use the def keyword, which means define main. We're going to define main. The parentheses here, we'll look at more in a minute, but that allows you to pass certain things into the function. So parameters, in other words. And this is where we're going to start our stuff. So the first thing we need to do is sort of see what we need to do. So our first question says we have a loud talking parrot. The hour parameter is the current hour and time in the range 0 to 23. We're in trouble if the parrot is talking and the hour is before 7 or after 20. Return true if we're in trouble. So we'll have our parrot function here. And I'm going to move this off the screen. And so you guys can see, I'm going to sort of zoom in a little bit here. I'm not sure I can do it on here. Yeah, so we'll zoom in. Hopefully you guys can see all that. So we're not going to have anything in our main function just yet. So we're going to define another function called parrot trouble. And it takes two parameters. One of them is talking and one of them is hour. And here I'm going to call our function because we want to use it once we get it. So talking is a Boolean value, and Booleans is simple true or false. So I'm going to say it's true, and the hour is 6 o'clock. And that's all you have to do to call that function. Now here we haven't finished defining our function. Well, we've defined it, but we haven't told it like exactly what goes in here. So the first thing that we need to do, also for people who are more advanced who are watching it, I'm going to not shorthand anything. So I'm not going to shorthand the if statement. I'm not going to do any of that. For you, those that don't know what I'm talking about, don't worry. Once you get further along in your career, you'll understand what I'm saying. For an example, I could just do a return, and then do, return and then do an if statement here, and it'll just return true or false. But I think it's better that you learn the longhand way of doing things so that you understand how the computer actually thinks. So we need to do an if statement. So if talking. So the first thing we need to check is if it's talking, because if it's not talking, it doesn't matter. So if talking, and now we need another set of parentheses here. So hour is before 7, or hour is after 20 or 8 o'clock. You got to put a colon, and we're going to return true that we're in trouble. Now this is where I'm talking about you could also shorthand here, but we're going to do else. We're going to return false. So if I run this, so we have if talking. If this is false, it's just going to skip over it because it's not true, because we have an and here. If we had an or, it wouldn't matter if it could be talking or it could not be talking. But we need to make sure it's talking, and the hour is before 7. And that says or after 8. So if it's before 7 or after 8, we're going to say we're in trouble, and we're going to return true. Else, if this isn't true, then we'll return false. So, and I can go here and I can say print and then call a function. So that way we can see some output on the console here. Oh, and the other thing that you need to do is call the main function. So you can just simply say main, pass it's nothing, and run. So we get true. If you can't, let me see if I can blow this up a little bit more. So it says we have true here. Okay. And so what happens if we put false? We get false because it's not talking. So this would be the way that I had worked this problem. So the next, we're going to go through C#. Like I said, I did that video before. And I'm just going to go in here and delete all this. I'll save it. So when we run our application, we should just get hello world. Hopefully you guys can see it, but that just says hello world. If you're on, this program's for Mac and Linux, Monodevelop. If you're on Windows, you can use Visual Studio, or Visual Studio Code would work too. If you have Visual Studio installed, that might be the easiest way, because you can just click File, New Console Application, and that will generate this. If you're on Linux or Mac, you can install Monodevelop, and it's sort of it's Visual Studio, but for Mac or Linux. Alright, so I'm going to show you how cool it is that we can just sort of reuse our code. So here we would need to do we need to call another function, and that's parrot trouble. And so when I said that C# is a very strong type language, it's the same for Java, we need to tell it the data type. So Boolean, talking, Or no, not here. So here I can simply pass true, and the hour is 6. Now it's red because it doesn't know what parrot is, so we need to do a public static, and we're going to return a Boolean value. We're going to call this parrot trouble. We're going to pass it 2 things. A Boolean value called talking, integer value of hour. Now in Python you do a colon here and do some indentation. But for here we need curly braces. And there you have it. So now we've defined, that's how you would define a function. We'll later get into what this public static means. Just know that when you're defining a function, here we have void because we're not returning anything. But if I included a return statement here, return 6 for instance, you'll see that this won't run because this is saying we're not returning anything. Return void. So this is what's considered a main method in C# and Python. We'll get into that later. For instance, for this tutorial, the only thing I want to focus on is the logic and how to step through a problem. So now that we have a public function that returns bool or boolean parrot trouble, now I have to define that. We have to tell it what it is. So what I want to show you is I can come over here to this Python and I can grab this entire if statement right here that I've already written. I'm just going to paste it in there, like so. Now, of course, this isn't going to work because the logic is correct, but the syntax isn't. The first thing that we should fix is our AND statement. To do an AND in C# or Python, you'll need to do the double ampersand, and that means AND. The same thing for OR. We need those 2 lines, and we have to remove colons here. Also, lowercase, the true and false, so we're not returning the class. And the other thing you need to do is make sure you include semicolons on the end of everything. So anything that you type in C#, you'll need to include a semicolon. It's basically, think of it like the end of the sentence. So it'll finish executing and end. So if I run this, and here I can do a console.writeLine and call our function. But here I want to be a little different. I want to show you that you can assign variables to it, so I can do results equals and for instance, I'm doing var because I might not know what parrot trouble actually returns, and so I'm going to have var calculate that or make that for me, so when it returns a boolean, it'll know that it's a boolean. And then I can say console.writeLine, and I want you to write the results to the screen. So if I run this, I should get true. And I do. Hello world, true. Now, not to confuse you, but to be so that you're aware, I can, for most if statements, you'll most of the time say if this is true, and then you'll have an execution process. You'll check some more logic, and then you'll return something at the end. For us, we're just simply checking something and then returning it. So the correct syntax for our if statements should in fact have a set of curly braces, where in which we then put everything within our if statement. Now the reason why not using them still works is because we only have one line of code to execute. But because if we had multiple lines in here, maybe we want to check something else. You know, we want to say, like if we had, so we want to check to see if it's hour 20, but then we also want to come down here and say, we could also say, you know, we could say console dot write line, and then we'll say this is a task, right? So we might want to execute something, we might want to call another function, we might want to do a lot of things, but if you don't have these curly braces in here, it won't get there, if that makes sense. I'm going to take that out of there. So if I run this, I'll get the same thing, but this time I'll get this is a task and then true. So that's how you want to write your if statements, is to make sure you include, if you're just going to have one line, you're just going to check something return, then you don't necessarily need the brackets in C# or Java. Alright, so let's go to our next question here. Our next question says, the parameter weekday is true if the weekday and the parameter vacation is true. If we are on vacation, we sleep in. If it's not a weekday or we're on vacation. Return true if we sleep in. So I'm going to show you how I would return or solve this problem. And I suggest that you try to pause the video and try to do this on your own, and then come back and see if you were right. The first thing I want to do is say if not weekday or we're on a vacation, return true. Else, return false. So what I'm saying here is if it's not a weekday or it's vacation, return true, we sleep in. If not, return false. So what I do is go up here, I'm going to do a print statement, but print sleep in, and I'm going to say true, it's a weekday, but true, it's also vacation. So what do you think I should get? Exactly, I get true. Get true because it's a vacation. Now if I put false here, I should get false. And I do. So I'm going to take this logic, come over here to my C# code. Now you can sort of see that this is not always true, but sometimes, a lot of times, you will write less code in something like Python. So I'm going to do another function here, and this also returns a bool. We're calling this sleep in. This passed two functions: a bool weekday and a boolean of vacation. So if, now this is how you do a not. So instead of saying not, you're just going to do exclamation point, weekday, and for our or statement here, or vacation. Now I spelled weekday wrong. I forgot my K. So if not weekday. So if not weekday. I don't like this Monodevelop. Alright, so if weekday, we're going to return true, that we sleep in. Else, return false. And then we can call our function up here. So I'll copy our console. And this is a capital C. Right, so it's true that it's a weekday. But it's also true that it's vacation. So I get true as well. And if I make vacation false, I should get false. And I do. So you can see that our code can be really reused multiple times throughout. Alright, so I'm going to skip the next one because it's sort of the same thing. Or no, we can do it. We'll skip it. We'll go to the next one here. So our next question is, squirrels in Palo Alto spend most of the day playing. In particular, they play if the temperature is between 60 and 90 inclusively. Unless it is summer, then the upper limit is 100 instead of 90. Given an integer temperature and a Boolean value of summer, return true if the squirrels play and false if otherwise. Alright, so then they give us a starter function here. That's what they want us to call. So we'll go over to our spider and we'll just we'll define a new function. And it said, so the first thing I would do, if this was me, is I need to say if it's summer. And the reason why I would check to see if it's summer is because, first of all, if it's summer, then our values are going to change instead of 100, we now can go up to, instead of 90, we can now go up to 100. So we can say is summer, and temperature is greater than or equal to 60, and temperature is also less than or equal to 100, then we will return true that they play. If not, this is going to return false. But if it's false, we'll just go to our next statement. So if, and actually we'll do an elif, else if temperature is greater than or equal to 60 and temperature is less than or equal to 90, return true. Else, return false. Alright, so there's another way you could do this too. But let's just run our function. Sorry for the delay there. So we'll say print squirrel play. And we'll say that it's 91 degrees and that summer is true. It is summer here in the valley. And we get true. And if we say it's not summer anymore, it's fall, we get false. You could also, in a way, just return false here. And the reason why you can do this is because if these two if statements are false, then we can just return false. But I'm going to leave it the way that we'd had. But if you see it that way, just know it's saying the same thing. Or you might just see an if statement and then just immediately another if statement. So if this, okay, if this, and so if that's false, it just skips over it, and then you might just have a return false if those check out to be false. But I like it like that. I think it's easier to learn if you say if, else. So else is sort of like your last call. Like if nothing else works, do this. And we can take the same logic and pull it in over here, our Monodevelop here. So we can have another static function that returns Boolean. Squirrel play. Has a integer of temp. Boolean is summer. And I'm going to copy our logic. And so this is what I'm saying. You can learn whatever language you want. Whichever you think is easier, learn it. Do it. Just learn something. It can be any language you like. As you can see, and I forgot, you probably can't see this, so let me fix this. I'm not probably been able to see anything I'm doing, and I don't know what's up with this thing. The control plus doesn't work, so we'll just have to go to this view, zoom in, view, zoom in, view, zoom in. Hopefully you can see that now. So you can see I just copied and pasted the code, and then I just fixed it. So I just removed semicolons, added our ampersands where needed to be, made those lowercase, put semicolons on the end, removed our colons from our ifs. I changed elif to just if. There's no such thing as elif in C#. And then we have else. So, and when we get further in, we'll actually do a nested if statement, and maybe do some loops too. We'll see. And so if I run this function, so we can do console.writeLine, call our function, and we're going to say it's 91, true. And we'll run our function. We should get true, right? They play because it's summer. And if we put false in here, that it's fall time now, we should get false. And we do. So, next question is, well then, Alright, we're going to do this one. Squirrels get together for a party like they have cigars. They like to have cigars. A squirrel party is successful when the number of cigars is between 40 and 60 inclusively, unless it is a weekend, in which case there's no upper bound for the number of cigars. Return true if the party within the given values is successful, or false if otherwise. So we're going to copy our function here. We'll go to our spider and we'll define another function called cigar parties. So if is weekend, so this is saying if it's true. You could also do this if you want, or if you want to check if it's false, you could do false or do the not is weekend. So if weekend is true, and the only thing we need to check for, so and here, and cigars is greater than or equal to 40. Return true. Else if, now here you don't really need to say not is weekend, because if it's not weekend, if it's not a weekend, this is just going to skip. So the other thing we need to check is cigars is greater than or equal to 40, and the cigars is less than or equal to 60. So if this is true, return true as well. If not, return false. So if I run this function here, we'll say that we have 62 cigars, and it is the weekend. So let's see what we get. And we get true. And if it's not the weekend, then we smoked too much and we didn't have a good time. And so for our C# class here, I can't remember what the there's a shortcut for this, but I can't remember it. So we're going to return a bool. So far we're just returning booleans, because we're doing a lot of logic here. And we'll have an integer called cigars, and we need to name our function or method. We'll call it cigar party. Integer number cigars, and a boolean is weekend. And then I'm just going to pull in my logic from here, and we'll fix it up. So first thing, remove that. The next thing you got to do, check that, return true, add semicolon, change that to an if, remove that, make this true, semicolon. Save it. Now we come up here, console.writeLine, cigar party. It wants to take an integer number of cigars, so we're going to have 90 cigars that weekend. We smoked hell a lot, and true, it is the weekend. Also a lot of cigars there. And we'll save it, run it, we should get true. And we do. Now if I make this 50, because normally I've been changing the true or false value, but we'll change this to 50. We didn't have a good time, because we didn't smoke enough. Actually, I think it's got to be 40, right? I did that wrong. Equal to 60. Oh, it's 40. Yeah, so I have to do... We did 30 cigars. And there we get false. Sorry, I was looking at the above one too. I was like, it's 90? Really? So we'll do, yeah, so if I do 30 in there, I get false. Now, it is the weekend, so if I smoke 500, I get true. If I smoke one cigar, it's false. As you see. Alright, so we're going to do one more question here. Given a string, return a string where for each char in the original there are 2 chars. Alright, so let's start with the C# one. So we'll do public static, and we're returning a string, and we're calling this double char. Where's my notepad here? So return, we're just gonna have something called a string called str. Now for each, we'll do a for each, so we're looping through this. So for each char I in str, we could say console dot write line, for instance, and we'll pass it I. And so for this up here, we could call our function double char, pass it hello world, and make sure that we pass it this string. If we run this, we should get hello world. Oh. So we'll just do a void. So that way it doesn't return anything. And you see we get hello world. So what we have to do here is, I'm going to go to coding bat real quick because I don't know if I got the right one I want to do. Okay, yeah. So what we want to do here is we want to double it. So if we pass in race car, we should get something like this. It'll double the characters each time. So in our for each loop, we're gonna make a new string above here. We're gonna say our results, and we'll just assign it a blank. And we have to tell it what it is. So it is a string. Right, so string results. Boom. Alright, and so in here, so for each char and I, we'll say string equals plus equals I plus I. And here we just need to do results. And so this is like saying, this plus equals is like saying equals results plus. So whichever way you find that it seems makes the most sense, you can do it. So by doing the plus equals, it's saying take itself and then add this to it. So I like to use the plus equal sign. And then out of our for loop, we'll return results. And then we have to say we're returning a string here. And then if we come up here, we can say console.writeLine and then we'll play here, see what it returns. And that's not what we wanted. Why is it giving me a number? That was why. Okay. So that should work now. There we go. So I didn't have a plus sign in there, so I was multiplying it. So I do this again. That should still work out. I'm not sure why. Okay, I'm not sure why this is. Maybe it's because it's a for each loop. So for this, I'm sorry. Just do results equals results plus I plus I. I have to look into that. I'm not sure. That's weird. But that's how you would. I would do a for each loop here and just loop through each char. So char is a single character and a string value, which is or str, which is string. So results equals results plus I, which in this case would be the first letter would be H. And then we're going to add another H to it. And then at the end we'll return our results. And then up here we're passing whatever. So if I put in race car and I run it, we'll also get race car. Okay. And now we'll do the Python. Alright, so, and I go back to, let me go here and grab my double chaw. Okay. Alright, so now we have defined a function double char. And for here I'm going to do a for I in, and we're going to pass it a range. Now what this does is calculate the length of the str. And then what we want to do is, before that, we're going to do another results equals a blank string. So here we'll say results was results plus and that's how you index into the string. And so we're indexed, so we have the length of the string. So let's say the string was 5. We're going to start at 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and we're just going to index into whichever number we're on to. And then we're going to do str. We'll do another I. Right. And then out of here, we'll return results. So if I go up here, say print double char. I'll pass it race car. See what it returns. And as you see, we have a double race car. And I'm pretty sure for this one you can do plus equals. And it does the same thing. I'm not sure why the C# wasn't working right. But that, I'm pretty sure it has something to do with the for each loop in C#. So, I'd have to look that up. Not that I use for each a lot, but not necessarily to calculate strings. Yeah, it doesn't. I'm not really sure. It'd be something I have to look up, but I know this is really the way you want to write it. It's just a shorthand version. Like I said, you most certainly can do equals results plus str of whatever index you're on and just double that and then return the final results. Or you can just do it how I had it. So that is going to conclude the basic class or course in Python, how I would solve some coding back problems. And let me show you coding bat real quick. So in coding bat here, you can go to coding bat, and they have a lot of different ones. So they have all kinds of stuff, especially in Java. Java has a lot now. In Python, they're sort of limited on what they have, and so I got some questions from up to here. They also have some lists. That's like your arrays. I'll do that in a more of an advanced thing, and I might cover some more stuff in here in Java. They seem like, I haven't actually really looked at this, but they have what seems like a lot of stuff. So I'll definitely go in there. And they also have some help links here. So if you're wanting to learn a little bit, I'm not sure if they have that for the Python one. Yeah, they don't, but I mean they do, but not as much. So definitely go out there, try them out. It's a little website. You can make an account, and it'll save your work. And so yeah, this all looks new. So they're doing some more work to it, which is pretty awesome. But yeah, I got all the questions from here. It's a very easy way to just practice every day. You could do a couple a day, and before you know it, you'll be pretty good at it.